Well, looks like we're connected. I hope that the connection stays stable. Well, we missed last week because I was traveling. I was at the Abbott's meeting in New Hampshire. Oh, I can see the videos. Okay, I don't know how well this is going to work. We'll see. We'll keep going. Can somebody give me some feedback if the audio is okay? Can you hear me? Audio is good. Okay, so we'll start. Namo tassa Namo tassa bhagavato. So we're on developing skillful perception, the quality of sanya. If any of you have been following along in the text, you may have a question about the title I gave to this week's talk, because the text in Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation has for this this perception of impermanence in all phenomena. But that, first of all, that sound permanence. Dig a little bit into this passage, and he says, quote from the footnote, some manuscripts read this perception as Sabba Sankharesu Anicca Sanya, perception of wishlessness or desirelessness in regard to all conditioned phenomena, which seems to me to make more sense in context. We often find this in the Pali Canon. There's several recensions that have come down to us that often differ in details here and there. When you're going to, but I've chosen to take this as this is an idea that is, of course, central to the Buddhist teaching in the formula of the Four Noble Truths, which is the core and the crux of the whole of the teaching. The definition given for Third Noble Truth, the truth of the cessation of suffering, which is nibbana, is that this happens right here when the desire, in this case, noble truth. Compulsive desire is, of course, the cause of suffering. So when the cause of suffering is when the cause of suffering is eliminated, then suffering does not arise. So it's a central idea of the realization of nibbana, almost definitional, that when desire ceases, then the mind liberates from samsara, because it is desire in the acquisition of an object. This is samsara as this is the working of samsara at the most immediate or atomic level. The finest grain is the mind seeking an object and acquiring an object and being dissatisfied with the object because the object itself is inherently dukkha and is unable to satisfy the mind. So some people have translated dukkha as unsatisfactory or unsatisfactoriness, which is not bad, but it does have unfortunately, to it. And I think that's very important in the object itself. We also have to distinguish between ha and chanda. Sometimes people take the teaching about being without desire as making the person into a kind of a vegetable. You have no motive to do anything. But that's a problem with the looseness of the English word desire. Tanha is defined very specifically as being of three kinds. There's the desire sense pleasure being. Chanda is also sometimes translated as desire, and it's a broader meaning in that it's not that it doesn't have the specific ethical import of tanha. It depends on the object. It's a motive or a enthusiasm. So it can be unwholesome. Then, in the case of kamachanda, which is desire or ambition or impulse for sense pleasure, but it can also be positive as a dhammachanda, the desire for dhamma or the desire for understanding, the desire for knowledge or liberation. And it's a spiritualism, and in fact, is crucial for salvation that desire, because it's such a broad term, is a desire for dhamma or desire for liberation. But that's to be clearly distinguished from tanha. Now we're talking in this sutta in general. The context is about our perception. So the perception of desirelessness is to perceive in a way that we don't arouse desire. So it's again in part, as has come up a couple of times in this series, the choice in perception of which aspects, which signs and particulars, to use the Sudimagga language, we're focusing on. In perceived station, there's a sutta where the Buddha is talking about his early days, his youth as a noble in the Sakyan Republic, and it's one of the few suttas, actually very rare references in the suttas to the Buddha's early life. Most of the details we have about the Buddha's early life come from later commentarial sources, but in this one, he's talking about his early life as a layperson in the world, and he says that at one time he liked a woman, and then later he saw this woman talking and laughing with another man, and jealousy and envy, being upset. And then so so you can see that as a kind of a obvious case example of how desire causes suffering and lack of desire frees one from suffering. It's one of the aspects of suffering that's listed in First Noble Truth is being separated from that which one desires. So obviously, if one does not have a desire, then one does not have that particular suffering. There's a passage in a Mahayana text there's wishlessness to the fulfilling gem. Something like in the West, they have the Holy Grail or the Philosopher's Stone. It's some rare object that's sought after by heroes, and the wish fulfilling gem is a magic jewel that when one holds it in his hand, then he can acquire anything he wishes for. But wishlessness is already the wish fulfilling gem, because if you have rid yourself of desire, then you already have everything you wish for. Or actually, I think the text identifies contentment with the wish fulfilling gem. If you're content with what you already have, if you're content with where you are, are already fulfilled. So you have. I mean, it may caught in desire, that sort of a mythology, or a simile may seem sort of a cheat, but it isn't. You really are. If you're content, all your wishes are fulfilled, and you're happy. So happiness is really comes in this way of thinking, comes not from getting all your sensual and other desires fulfilled, but from abandoning all your desires and just being content. There's another sutta where the Buddha uses a simile or a parable that's is graphic or canon. Sense desire. Says to his listeners, many of you may have seen, there's a leper that sits in the marketplace here in Kapilawatu begging, and his body is covered in weeping sores, and he has beside him a brazier of hot coals and a little fire to keep them hot. And every now and again, with a pair of tongs, he takes out a red hot coal and he presses it into one of his wounds and cauterizes it. And this gives him momentary relief from suffering. And he said, if this leper was miraculously cured tomorrow and got up and walked away clean and whole, do you think he would ever feel nostalgic or feel regretful about his hot coals? And he explained the parable as the sense objects. So for for one who abandons desire, he is like the leper that walks away whole and clean, and he would never be nostalgic or regretful about what he has abandoned. So for people who think, I could never give up my desires, I could never give up my sense pleasures or satisfactions. Another less gruesome analogy, one we can think about easily, is at one time you were a small child, and you probably had a favorite toy, whether it was your truck or your dolly or stuffed bear, and you couldn't imagine being parted from it. It was your favorite thing in the world. But no interest in it. That's the movie intensely desired and desirable now is irrelevant to you. So what you can't imagine giving up now, once it's abandoned, you won't feel you'll have progressed beyond it. And the perception here that the sanya is perceiving and appreciating, let's say, the state of wishlessness which is related very strongly to contentment. When you feel content, you feel happy, you feel at peace, you feel no suffering from lack. You just at peace, and being conscious of that, perceiving in that way is important. You know, we, generally, we should try and be percipient and cognizant of our whole positive and so this happy. So I think I'll leave it there and have a look at what we got going in the chat. I see it's very busy. Oh boy, I'm scrolling back on the chat. There's lots of it. How do you separate desires from rational goals? I think I covered that. That's the difference between tanha and chanda. That there can be, uh, we can have motivation and goals that are not that are wholesome. Okay, something essential. If you're trying to correct something, that that's that's a desire in the sense of chanda. If it's something useful or positive. Uh, Someone's asking me about my internet connection. Yeah, I am on Starlink, and this is the best option I have available at this location, and it seems to be very adequate for downloading, but uploading it, you can see it gets a bit glitchy. Um, an option to do that with the YouTube interface. Happiness also comes from making technological progress, like a better internet connection. Someone says, I donated money to Buddhist centers about 10 times in my life, 2 times exactly the day after I gained substantial financial profit. Was it just a coincidence or there's no saying for sure of knowing whether it could even be generosity is certainly the karmic root of you know prosperity karmically, but it doesn't necessarily translate in this life. The story with the leper was my gateway to Buddhism. It's a powerful analogy. Yes, it is. It's a very powerful image. A lot of why kids have favorite toys is because they're still learning from them, not because they have a psychological. Oh, no, I wouldn't suggest children. It's, um, someone's asking about these streams. They are record will appear automatically on my YouTube channel, and they should remain on. And the same link that you access to hear it live will, at the conclusion of this talk, it will already be automatically turned into a fixed recorded video, and you can watch it at any time later. male or female. That are stated in the commentaries to the Abhidhamma, and I think to the Vinaya also, about the karmic root of being born in one sex or the other. It was generally considered that the male sex was the more desirable rebirth. And there is actually a sutta, I think it's named Gutra, a short sutta about the reasons why the male birth is considered superior, or not superior, that's the wrong word, but more desirable, more favorable, because they're free from various, males are free from various that a female's unique discomfort. A better rebirth, and it's an easier rebirth, let's say, to be a male. It's also the Buddha in the Vinaya text related to the establishment of the Bhikkhuni order. The Buddha specifically stated that male and female makes no difference in terms of enlightenment. Both have the full potential to reach the stages of enlightenment. But what causes that karmic difference? One of the places it's said that sexual misconduct or promiscuity, overindulgence in sensual desire, causes a female rebirth. You have to understand that this much male dominant on the female version of humanity. Another in the Abhidhamma, one of the explanations is that I'm trying to think of the right words that were used. Various factors are either strongly present or weakly present in the consciousness, and if they're strongly present, then one becomes a male. If they're more weakly present, one becomes a female. So I don't think there was anywhere a really fixed understanding of this, or a clear definition. At least, and the traditional way of dealing with anxiety is anapanasati, mindfulness of breathing. And particularly if you do it not on the nose, but if you do it on the belly and the abdomen, because anxiety as an emotion, it's seated in that area. If you, and also it gets, I think just the fact of getting your consciousness seated below the neck is useful for people that are caught up in their head all the time. And this can be a part of anxiety. And you also you understand yourself from your question. I can see that emptiness, or not self, or not me, not mine, is something to remind yourself of. To remind yourself the future formation, spinning, and to remind yourself that mental process itself is empty and delusional. Is consciousness more important than other skandhas? In some respect, we could say that when all the khandhas work together, but consciousness or chitta or vijnana is that which knows. It is central to the whole constellation. So I think you could say it's the most important. Thank you for this talk. It's a shame to miss a great deal of detail from your discussion. And I wish you had a better upload help. With Starlink doesn't use over, and the dish actually aligns itself to track the satellites. It has a little motor in it, and it actually slowly moves to track the satellites. I don't really know why. It seems to have been this last month or so that I've been having this problem. Before, I was seemed to be better. We'll see it, whether I don't know what it has to do with, but I'll see if I can. If anybody has any suggestions about how I can um, improve the speed. I, I'm one thing. Time for people being on the internet in North America, and the bigger system may be uploaded. It's also an inconvenient time for people who live in Europe, and I know some of the listeners here are from other countries. So what I may do, what was suggested to me, is that I do a speed test at different times of day, and if I find that there's a particular time of day that works better, I may switch. I'll certainly inform everybody of that. Yeah, someone suggests streaming at night. Um, yeah, that's. I was thinking. I was thinking of switching to early morning. That would be more convenient for me. I don't really want to really at night. And if I that might be what happens. Okay, so I think I'll check out now, and we'll see you next week. I think we've got how many more have we got in this series? I think this was what, 8. So I think we have 2 more. No, this was 9. So we actually have only 1 more to do. Okay, so that will be next week.